Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, a new version of Naval Mine Rogue comes around. I'm Uncorrupt. We're going to be taking a look at the Throne of Tides version of Naval Mine Rogue. If you're familiar with the channel, you know this is one of my favorite decks. If you're not familiar with the channel, now you know this is one of my favorite decks. So I actually found this list directly on Twitter, and I copied the list 30 for 30 from Bandit Keith, as you can see here. He tweeted out, Peasant in Mine Rogue is actually genius, boys. Peak around 80 legends before a massive tilt streak to 220, then climb back to 150. So playing at a very, very high rank with Mine Rogue and doing very well with it is Bandit Keith. Later on, somebody asked him what's the mulligan, and mulligan is exactly the same as the previous versions of Naval Mine Rogue. Mulligan for tradables, Knowles, Graveyard, and Peasant going first because Peasant is included in the list. And he's exactly right about that. One thing that I would offer here, for me, sketchy information is always a keep in this list. You know, you can win games without Snowfall Graveyard. You can win games without Wildpaw Knoll. You will never win a game with Naval Mine Rogue without actually having a Naval Mine. So we can't keep the Naval Mine. That's not a good keep in any scenario whatsoever. Sketchy information, though, that is a good keep. Jumping into the list here, we can see that the list is pretty similar to the previous version in the Voyage to the Sunken City list. So a couple of things have changed around though. Peasants included in the list. Peasant, of course, at the start of your turn, draw a card. This is what Bandit Keith is saying. If you're on the play, meaning you're going first on turn one, you want to keep Peasant and you want to play Peasant on turn one. So Peasant is a really interesting card in this list, and it's really interesting from a deck building standpoint. So because it's a neutral card, we can play this on turn one and it doesn't break our Maestra disguise, which is a huge plus. There is a little bit of anti-synergy with Peasant with the rest of the deck though, in that if we draw Peasant off the top while we're still in our Maestra disguise, Wildpaw Knoll doesn't get discounted. So we draw a neutral card, Wildpaw Knoll, we don't get the discount. But if we can get Peasant down on turn one and it's able to draw one or two cards, then statistically it's extremely likely that we're going to be able to discount the Wildpaw Knolls very, very quickly. In addition to the fact that I've always felt that if you draw enough cards with Naval Mine Rogue, you're just going to be able to win the game. You're going to be able to piece together some certain combination of cards to be able to lethal your opponent. Unless it's in, you know, kind of like maybe that 85-15 matchup of Control Warrior. We can beat Control Warrior, it's just really hard because they heal so much, they just have so much armor and health gain that they have access to because of that armor. But outside of that, if you draw enough cards, you're just going to be able to win. And Peasant allows us to do that, so it allows us to draw cards to be able to advance our game plan. And then potentially the cards that it's drawn is also allowing us to discount our Knolls. Also of note, if Peasant comes off of the Shroud of Concealment, you can actually play it in Stealth, which in almost every case is going to mean that it's going to be able to draw at least one card and potentially be able to punch our opponent in the face for 2 damage. So Peasant, it's been just really, really good in the list. I've been playing this list the last, I think, about 2 days now, and Peasant is performing just really, really well. Again, especially turn one on the play. Also added to the list, Shatter Shambler. This is a Throne of the Tides mini set card. Battle Cry, your next Death Rattle minion. Costs 1 less, but immediately dies when played. So these actually replaced backstabs in the list. This allows us to immediately be able to kill our Naval Mine. So you could potentially play this and then, you know, just kind of sit on your 1-mana Naval Mine until you have a Snowfall Graveyard in play. That's going to vary from game to game. You know, I just use that as an example. Sometimes it's perfectly fine to detonate your Naval Mine with no Snowfall Graveyard in play. Sometimes 4 damage is just enough. It depends on your hand. It depends on your opponent's health total, so on and so forth. And then it also just puts a 1/3 in play, so potentially it's another minion to be able to fight for the board with. Potentially it could be 1 chip damage to your opponent's face if it gets to attack face, so on and so forth. So again, Shatter Shambler for me, there's a little bit of anti-synergy with the deck because of Shroud of Concealment. We don't necessarily want to be drawing Shatter Shamblers. I mean, for me, with the Shroud of Concealment, I would prefer to be hitting Knolls and probably Forsaken Lieutenants. And if I was desperate and didn't have a mine, then, you know, I'd be happy to hit a mine off of the Shroud of Concealment. Because again, no mine, no win with this deck. But outside of that, you know, Shatter Shambler has been performing really well also. And I feel like this deck is actually the best version that the deck has seen so far. So one thing that does make me a little bit sad about the deck, I think some people are starting to feel like the deck is, you know, bad for Hearthstone. I kind of understand where they're coming from. And at the same time, I kind of think it's fine. Part of me thinks it's fine because I just love the deck. I have fun playing it. I don't want to lose it to a nerf. But I understand people's complaints are you can't interact with your opponent. They either have the cards or they don't. And pretty much whether or not the Naval Mine Rogue wins is whether or not they draw the cards. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Our opponents can't really disrupt our game plan. You know, we play Snowfall Graveyard, they can't do anything about it. They can't remove this effect, they can't prevent it. There's nothing they can do but just take the extra damage if we have the naval mines and we're able to detonate them in some way. So I really do like the list. I also see people calling for Rogue to get more consistent and better card draw. If Rogue gets that card draw, which the class probably needs, then these lists are going to just get totally out of control. They're going to be way too good, and then there's probably going to have to be adjustments at some point. Maybe some type of nerf to the mine itself. You know, we can leave that conversation for another time, but the list has been performing really, really well. I'm actually going to jump into some gameplay. I absolutely love playing this deck. If you've got these cards and are able to put this list together, I would encourage you to play it as well. Quick games, fun list. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe. Also, you can catch more Hearthstone content from me on Twitter at UncorruptGG. So we're going to keep both Knolls here, and we're going to keep our tradable. It's a pretty good hand starting off for us. Looks like our opponent is a warrior. Could still be a rogue. We'll find out pretty quickly. It is a warrior. If that was a peasant, I believe I would coin it out against warrior just because warrior can't remove it. Forsaken Lieutenant. So I can actually go coin Gone Fishing and then play 2 1-mana Knolls here. But I have to take the rogue card. If I don't take the rogue card, these don't get discounted. I'm just going to go ahead and get our double Knoll down. We're going to hope that these Knolls can get some hard yards up the middle for us as far as being able to damage our opponent. This matchup is just really tough. Hard to be able to win because of the amount of health gain that warriors tend to have. Also, at any time, they could just Frozen Buckler Shield Shatter and clear our board. That would probably actually be a game-winning play for them, just based on what our hand looks like right now. Outside of the 2 Knolls, we're missing everything that we would really like to have to be able to win this game. Looks like our opponent is thinking pretty hard here. Trade. That's not that great for him. They don't have From the Depths, so that's really good news for us. Prep does nothing here. We're just going to go ahead and commit a little bit more to the board. And I think we actually just go ahead and play the Shambler as well. I mean, it's another minion. It spends our mana. Our opponent may be able to equip the Outrider Axe here and start drawing some additional cards, but if they do that, they're taking damage as well. So Frozen Buckler Finley, they're hoping that they have a Shield Shatter on the bottom of their deck. They have a Shield Slam, but not a Shield Shatter, so we'll take that. And again, we just don't really have anything here. The question is, I mean, this swing is irrelevant because that armor is going to be gone anyway. The question is, do we develop the Lieutenant? I think the answer is no. We're going to discover. Composting is really good, and I'm actually going to prep this composting. So if these minions die, we're drawing 3 cards. That was actually a pretty clutch pickup. We need to be able to draw into, you know, mine or sketchy information. We need to be able to get access to our Naval Mine Rogue kit, which is going to be like Snowfall Graveyard, sketchy information. Here's a brawl. We have 2 pretty good outcomes, and we miss both, but we draw 2 cards. There's a Shroud. We're going to trade first. Sketchy information. We're going to take that. And we're going to push this damage face. Actually going to pass turn here. As soon as I play this, it's going to die because of the Shambler effect. Really hoping to draw into a Snowfall Graveyard at this point. Our opponent's now dredging cards that they sent to the bottom of their deck with Finley. No way to know if that's good or bad. Cutlass is going to be a trade. I'm going to prep the Shroud in case we hit Peasants. So 1 mine, 1 peasant. We're going to go ahead and get the peasant down. We're going to swing, we're going to swing. We're going to re-dagger. And we're going to pass. Still hoping to be able to hit a Snowfall Graveyard. As soon as the Snowfall Graveyard is equipped, we're going to get really serious about trying to finish our opponent. But this game has just been kind of slow. Slow in terms of being able to get our Naval Rogue action going. Our opponent still has access to tons of armor gain. You can see here he plays the Rikara. Gains 10. And he's just going to punch me in the face. And he's going to draw an additional 5 cards. Warrior just has so much card draw. They have card draw, they have mana cheat. Counterfeit Blade and Shroud. So at this point, I feel like we just need to play a bomb. Equip the blade, that'd be 5 mana. Kind of feels like we have to. We can't continue to wait for the Shroud. And we're going to... Are we floating the 2 or are we doing this? We're going to float the 2 and we're going to hang on to our Wicked Stabs here. So we're still just really dependent on hitting a Snowfall Graveyard at this point. And again, our opponent has so many cards in hand, we're expecting them to gain just an absolute metric ton of armor. Unlikely that we're going to be able to win this game. They also get a taunt in the way. We'll be able to take a trade here to draw an additional card, but we need to be able to detonate 3 bombs with Snowfall Graveyard in play. There's the Graveyard, and it's discounted. So we have, let's see, Graveyard, Forsaken, Bomb. I don't want to try to go too fast here, though. We're definitely going to Graveyard. I think we actually don't swing because we don't want to take the damage, or maybe it's fine. Let's go ahead and draw. There's another Forsaken. So I'm not going to swing, because I'll be able to kill his taunt with the 2 Forsakens with Rush. That's both fine. We'll play both of those. And we're just going to pass turn here. So I'll be able to play 2 Forsaken Lieutenants and a Naval Mine. Be able to remove this. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of Nogglings and probably a lot of armor gain here. They always discover armor gain, and when they have Bran in play, they get double. Heavy plates off a Noggling likely ends the game, and they may have it twice.
Pick me.
Conditioning isn't that good. Does he have armor gain is the question.
Pick me.
So they only gain 10 here. They're at 32. They're at 32, and we're going to be able to detonate 4 bombs, so we're actually going to win this game. So we're going to go Graveyard. We're going to go Lieutenant. Lieutenant. Bomb is going to detonate due to the Shambler effect. We actually have more than 32. I can actually even just hero power at this point to be able to finish them off. But we'll take a little bit of overkill damage. Really surprising we were able to get there against Warrior. They just didn't gain enough health to be able to beat us. Right off the bat here, we can see our opponent is showing Druid. Probably more likely that they're a rogue. I don't see too many Druids. It could be a Druid. The good news is, it doesn't really change our mulligan. We're still looking for all the same stuff. Peasant is, nowhere near as good. Absolutely not a keep. Just because the Druid is going to be able to hero power and kill it on turn 2. If we were on going first on turn 1, that makes it really interesting because we force our opponent to choose between coin, kill the peasant, or hold the coin for something else. If it's a rogue, again, that presents them with an interesting choice of what they want to do to deal with it. It is a rogue. They had a tradable. We don't have a tradable, which is bad. Since we can't trade, we're just going to go ahead and play the peasant, likely expecting the peasant to die here. Hoping that our opponent does not have a null. If they have a null, it would be really good for them. And it looks like they're just going to hero power it down, so we're okay with that. We're just going to tap here. Next turn, we'll get down a sketchy information into Counterfeit Blade. A different option would just be to clear our opponent's board. We can't afford to take too much damage. So we could go Tooth of Nefarian, Extortion. That clears our opponent's board. We don't take damage. It slows us down, but it also slows down our opponent. Another option would be just extort 1 and then coin the sketchy information. That might actually be a happy medium. I think it is.
I'm not getting any younger.
So that's an interesting turn. You know, there are a couple of choices there. I could have ignored the minions. I think that's a little bit dangerous. 6 power on the board is a lot. This is going to end up being a race for damage. We could have full cleared the minions that our opponent had on the board, and I took the middle line. We go ahead and advance our own game plan while trying to thwart our opponent's game plan a little bit.
Never bring a sword to a fish fight.
Again, our opponent just has a lot of power on the board, so I think the play is going to be prep the Tooth and then equip the Counterfeit Blade here. So we're going to remove what we can. We'll go ahead and take our random spell by killing the 3 health minion. Wound Prey is actually pretty good here. I'm thinking we actually Wound Prey face. 24 is a good breakpoint because of the way the math works out. With Snowfall Graveyards and bombs, 24 is a nice even number. So I can Wound Prey face, trade into the 3-1, and play the second sketchy information. So I believe that's going to be the play. Make sure we line it up, shoot him right in the face. This lets us draw our second mind and make sure that we get use out of the sketchy information. So feeling pretty good about the way the game is going so far. We're not facing overwhelming pressure from our rogue opponent just yet, which is how they're going to be winning the game. So now we're going to go ahead and get our Counterfeit Blade down. We are going to swing. So next turn, if we're able to hit our opponent in the face, we deal 8. And then being able to kill 2 bombs would actually be lethal. So I'm going to go ahead and get down this Shatter Shambler as well. So next turn, assuming I can hit face and they don't heal, there's no shenanigans, we're going to have a lethal setup. And that's going to do it. This game is actually in the books. We were able to get there. So you can see, though, our opponent was able to get us down to 9 health. So if we hadn't removed the minions that we removed, it could have been really close as far as our opponent being able to kill us. So we're going to take our 8 damage here. This is going to be the perfect example of a game that we win without having to use the Snowfall Graveyard. We also didn't have Knolls. And we play our mine and we extort our own mine for lethal. So nicely played game by us. We stayed safe, we drew cards, we were able to execute our game plan to be able to finish off our opponent. So our opponent's showing Warrior here. That's going to be a really tough matchup for us. If they're actually Warrior, could still be a Rogue. We're going to find out here in the first couple of turns. Peasant on 1 is just absolutely great. It's the strongest turn 1 play you can have in this deck. And we're going to keep the sketchy information. Counterfeit Blade, because we have a Peasant and because we have a sketchy information, I'm actually considering keeping this. It's not in the general mulligan, but just based on the other cards that are in hand, I think it's a keep. We play this on 1, we find something to do on turn 2, and then we have a 3 and 4 play setup where we're dealing damage to our opponent. I'm actually going to keep the Counterfeit Blade. Could be a mistake depending on what we're actually up against, whether it's Warrior or Rogue. But I feel fairly comfortable with it. Again, specific to this situation because of the other cards that I have in my hand. So we're going to find out. If it's a Rogue, they might actually want to remove this. If it's a Warrior, there's nothing they can do. So they have to Finley on turn 1 here. We're still going to get 2 damage, and we're going to get the tradable. This means that they can't play a From the Depths in Finley, so you can see, I mean, Warriors, they don't do this. This is a funky play. Unfortunately, we hit a Naval Mine here. That's mega unfortunate. Our Null would have actually been only 2 mana if we had hit a Rogue card, so really unfortunate. Being able to get this in play, trade, keep this guy up would have been absolutely huge. It's just not an option now. So we are going to take our damage, and we're going to ping face here. So statistically, this almost never happens. Our start would have just been incredibly strong if we had been able to get that Null down. Now the question is, do we go ahead and play the Null, or do we go for the sketchy information and begin executing our game plan? I think I actually want to get the Null down here. It's going to cause us to float a mana. But we don't have to rush. I mean, against the Warrior, we really need to hit a Snowfall Graveyard, I think, in a lot of cases. So I'm just going to get this down, take the trade. Another Counterfeit Blade. So again, unfortunately, we're floating a mana, but we're going to go ahead and get this damage in. We strip our opponent's armor off, so we have a Counterfeit Blade we're going to be equipping. Again, we're just floating a mana. You can see just how devastating it was to hit this Naval Mine right here. We're floating a mana every single turn now. We don't really care about the 5-4 in this matchup. Our opponent's not going to be able to pressure our health total. It's just all about whether or not we can kill them. So I'm going to ignore that. We're just going to equip the blade and send 8 damage face here. It's going to be up to our opponent to remove the Null. They can make the trade, or they'll gain some kind of armor and kill it in some other way. Just need to keep damage in face. Double Drake there, so we have, let's see. I break the weapon. That's 4, 8, 12, 16. It's going to be hard to get there because of these taunts now. We really kind of need that Snowfall Graveyard. I think the best play that we're going to be able to make, though, is to just develop and hope that our opponent doesn't have armor. So we're going to go ahead and get down this guy. We're going to get down the Naval Mine. And the question is, do I just want to dagger up to get that 4 damage? I'm thinking I don't want to swing because I don't want to take the damage. Could actually just double trade. There's an argument to not trade simply because we would like that Snowfall Graveyard in play. I'm gonna break the weapon and send the damage face. That turn was a little bit complicated, just trying to count the damage and figure out how we're going to be able to kill our opponent. Again, if they start gaining armor, we're just not going to get there without the Snowfall Graveyard, and that's why the matchup is so tough. So much of their deck is armor gain and card draw. You can see they gain 8, they're back to 22, and they're likely going to kill our bombs here to reduce the amount of damage that they're taking. Cutlass we can trade. So I mean, we can extort, equip the blade, so we can extort here, wicked stab here, make this trade, and still be able to go face with the counterfeit blade. So we're going to trade and see what we get. Shroud. I feel like we need to get the counterfeit blade down. Unfortunately, we're having to use all of our damage to be able to detonate this mine, but we might be able to draw into a Shatter Shambler with this the following turn, so we're going to extort, we're going to go ahead and Wicked Stab, and a trade there, and we're going to do this. Again, we're just having to hope that our opponent doesn't have more armor gain, and that's just unlikely in this matchup. We're extremely limited on the amount of damage that we can do now, especially because we haven't been able to hit a Snowfall Graveyard. And mana becomes an issue if we draw Snowfall Graveyard off the top, so... Also, it's pretty likely that they're able to gain armor off of the Nogglings, especially with the Bran Bronzebeard in play, so... it's looking like we're just not going to be able to get there this game. This matchup is just so tough. Yeah, double heavy plate. I'm actually just going to see my way out of the game. We're not going to be able to win this.